So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first reader tonight. Our first reader is Raquel Salas Rivera. Woo! The 2018 to 2019 Poet Laureate of Philadelphia. Woo! It's amazing. Raquel just came back from the Bay Area where they launched their book, and now this is a New York launch. They're the author of Lo Terciario, or The Tertiary, which is a book of poetry that presents a decolonial queer critique in response to the US involvement in the Puerto Rican debt crisis. The collection speaks about fluidity, translation, and loss in both Spanish and English. I was reading some of Raquel's work before this, and a big part of the fun of discovering new poets' works, I think, is the way that their other poet friends have poetically described them. And I really enjoyed this one piece, Carmen Jimenez Smith's introduction to Raquel's work in Boston Review. In a recent interview, Raquel mentioned that they, quote, fear this multiverse will disappear like so many multiverses disappeared under Pinochet, Franco, and Trujillo, and their poetry makes that fear palpable, end quote. Currently, they are co-editor of The Wanderer and co-editor of Puerto Rico and Mi Corazón, a collection of bilingual broadsides of contemporary Puerto Rican poets. I really like this line from the bio. If for Roque Dalton there is no revolution without poetry, for Raquel there is no poetry without Puerto Rico. Give it up for Raquel.
Hi, everyone. So, I tend to try and be humorous to some extent when I engage, but I'm a little sad. I mean, right now there's another blackout in Puerto Rico. And my mother was like, well, if you don't manage to contact me, because the cell phone signal goes down, you can call me at this number. And I don't know, I've just kind of been down around that. And I think part of what's difficult for me is that, the hurricane seems to be a marker in the U.S. imaginary of what's happening in Puerto Rico. But we've been going through a lot for a lot longer, which is kind of what this book is about. All the titles come from a translation of Marx's Capital. This translation was used in the 70s and 80s in political formation programs in Puerto Rico as a way of basically creating Marxists. My parents met in an organization, and my father was in charge of my mother's political education. So, hey, learning every day. So yeah, I'm gonna read in Spanish and then the translation in English. No se cambia una chaqueta por una chaqueta. Tomemos dos mercancías. Por ejemplo, 50 años de trabajo y una deuda acumulada por 50 años. Como propietaria de la primera, decides llevarla al Caribe Hilton bancario donde daría mi vida por pagar esta deuda. Pero te explican que no da. Así como la deuda y los 50 años de trabajo son valores de uso cualitativamente diferentes, son cualitativamente diferentes los trabajos por medio de los cuales llegan a existir. El del inversionista y el del colonizado. Tu vida no es suficiente. Tendrás que pagarlo con el trabajo de tus hijos y los hijos de tus hijos. Digamos que les dice nunca tuve, que nunca quise que heredaran mi deuda a aquellos que apenas saben distinguir entre coquito y leche. Pero te explican que aunque no tengas linaje, la heredarán tus vecinas, el perro que saquea tu basura, doña Sofía con su rosario luminoso, tu abuela que apenas sale a la farmacia, Angelía que aún espera tu libro, Luis que finalmente tiene empleo pero con deuda todavía, y el tipo que te asaltó por 10 pesos. Imagínate que vuelves con tus vecinos, con tu abuela, con el perro que a veces rebusca la basura, con Angelía, con Luis, y dices, he aquí mis herederos, ¿aceptarás nuestro pago? ¿Darás por finalizada nuestra deuda? ¿Borrarás nuestros nombres del sistema? Pero te dicen que te faltan los ríos, el río Oaxaca, el río Camuy, el río Cibuco, el río de Bayamón, el río Puerto Nuevo, el río Grande de Loíza, el río Herrera, el río Mamey, el río Sabana, el río Fajardo, el río Daguao, el río Santiago, el río Blanco, el río Macao, el río Seco, el río Maunabo, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Ellos serán tus herederos. Esta vez decides adelantarte, recorres todo Puerto Rico como un espectro, agarras puñales de lo que sea, sombrías de gasolinera, piedra caliza, actas de nacimiento, tiendas quebradas, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Vuelves al banco con tu isla tan densamente ingerida que toses semáforos y entierros y dices, he aquí todo lo que cabe entre el mar Caribe y el Atlántico Norte, he aquí mi imaginario. Pero te dicen, debes la nada, tu cuenta tiene un balance negativo. A cambio de esta deuda solo aceptamos chaquetas. Pero esto sí que no lo tienes porque casi nunca hace frío en Puerto Rico. Digamos que vas hasta Filadelfia a buscar las chaquetas que necesitan las abuelas, las Angelías, el río Monao, etc. Trabajas duro, buscas una licencia con dirección renovada, compras 3, 4, 500 chaquetas, vas a la sucursal local y dices, aquí las tengo. Quisiera pagar aquella deuda. Pero sin mirar te contestan, aquí en Philly no aceptamos chaquetas. Supongamos que en la caja de pasteles le envías las chaquetas a tu madre con una notita que lee pago, deuda de Puerto Rico. Y mami, tras decodificar tu letra, carga la caja hasta la sucursal del Banco Popular, el Caribe Hilton bancario o lo que sea bank, donde la miran mal y le indican, antes de que pueda decir palabra alguna, para entregar chaquetas, utilice la fila número 3. Imagínate que es una fila larga, larguísima, casi interminable. Una fila de 50 años. Coats are not exchanged for coats. Let us take two commodities, such as 50 years of work and one debt accumulated over 50 years. As proprietor of the first, you decide to take it to Caribe Hilton Banking, where I offer my life to pay this debt. But they explain that it's not enough. Just as the debt and the 50 years of work have use values that are qualitatively different, so are the two forms of labor that produce them, that of the investor and that of the colonized. Your life is not enough. You will have to pay with the labor of your children and your children's children. Let's say you tell them, I never had any, because I never wanted to make heirs of those that barely know the difference between milk and coquito. But they explain that even if you don't have a lineage, your neighbors, the dog that plunders your trash, Doña Sofia with her luminous rosary, your abuela that barely leaves the house to go to the pharmacy, Angelia that still awaits your book, Luis that finally has a job but still has debts to pay, that guy who mugged you for $10 will inherit. Imagine that you come back with your neighbors, with your abuela, with the dog that sometimes searches your trash, with Angelia, with Luis, and say, here are my heirs. Do you accept our payment? Will you terminate our debt? Will you erase our names from the system? But they say, where are the rivers? El río Oaxaca, el río Camuy, el río Cibuco, el río de Bayamón, el río Puerto Nuevo, el río Grande de Loíza, el río Herrera, el río Mamey, el río Sabana, el río Fajardo, el río Daguao, el río Santiago, el río Blanco, el río Macao, el río Seco, el río Maunabo, etc., etc., etc. They will be your heirs. This time you decide to get ahead. Like a specter, you haunt all of Puerto Rico. You grab handfuls of whatever, gasoline station umbrellas, limestone, birth certificates, shut down shops, etc., etc., etc. You go back to the bank with your island so densely ingested that you cough up burials and streetlights and say, here I have all that fits between the Caribbean Sea and the North Atlantic. Here I have my imaginary. But they say, you owe nothingness. Your account has a negative balance. In exchange for this debt, we only accept coats. But this you definitely don't have, because it's almost never cold in Puerto Rico. Let's say you go to Philadelphia to look for the coats much needed by the abuelas, the Angelias, the Rio Manabo, etc. You work hard, look for a license with a renewed address, buy 3, 4, 500 coats, go to the local branch and say, here they are, I would like to pay that debt. But without looking up, they answer, here in Philly we don't accept coats. Let's suppose that in the pasteles box, you send the coats to your mother with a note that reads, payment, Puerto Rican debt. And mommy, after decoding your handwriting, carries the box to the local branch of the Banco Popular, Caribe Hilton Banking, or Lo que sea Bank, where they give her a look, and before she can say a word, indicate, to turn in coats, use line number 3. Imagine that it is a long, longer, almost interminable line, a line that spans 50 years. Y'all are nice. Thanks. Heavy stuff, heavy stuff. All right. Quedará siempre un sustrato material. Escenario 4. Senex descubre que existen múltiples nadas, como existen múltiples infinitos. No, no son dobles noes, sino nadas cada uno excluyendo la otra completamente. La nada de números imposibles, la nada de fracciones inconmensurables, la nada de hormigueros de miel, cuarzos de nieve y pis, la nada de plátanos rosita, la nada del regreso, la nada de mis manos congeladas que cortaron y llevo de pie de conejo. Senex descubre que existen peores. A material substratum will always remain. Scene 4. Senex discovers there are multiple nothings, like multiple infinities. No, they aren't double no's, more like nothings, each one excluding the other completely. The nothing of impossible numbers, the nothing of incommensurable fractions, the nothing of honey anthills, quarts of snow and piss, the nothing of pink plantains, the nothing of return, the nothing of my frozen hands they've cut and I carry like a rabbit's foot. Senex discovers there are worsts. Escenario 7. Odette plancha el flamboyant pétalo a pétalo. En el relicario mezcla Jazmín y Elizabeth Arden. Su última descendiente pata se casa lejanamente con el cuerpo lagarto del sauce, algún huevo en algún hervor, alguna casa vendida, las paredes asbestadas, el canal católico puesto a todo volumen. La cantidad de dolor en la piel incremental se acumula porque el Papa ha dicho que este cuerpo es carnal, la deuda carnal, la mano del Papa sagrada, el perreo carnal, el vecino bolitero carnal, el monte donde yace el tanque de agua carnal, su nombre carnal, la estatua de la Virgen sagrada. Scene 7. Petal by petal, Odette irons the flamboyant. In the reliquary, a mix of Jasmine and Elizabeth Arden. Her last dyke descendant gets married far away with the lizard body of the willow. Some egg and some boiling, some house sold, the walls asbestoed, the Catholic channel at full volume. The amount of pain in the skin incremental. It accumulates because the Pope has said that this body is carnal, the debt carnal, the hand of the Pope sacred, perreo carnal, the bolitero neighbor carnal, the hill where the water tank sits carnal, the statue of the Virgin sacred. Escenario 8. Senex se inyecta hibisco. Quiere solamente mezclar ron y leche, inyectarse de cuanto florecer aparezca entre risco y florero, vender frutas en el puesto, cerrar el puesto por la ley de fruta podrida, inyectarse con metal y carpa, helar el agua, ser hielero, venderle bolas de cemento al gobierno, vender pinchos, horchata, maví, vender recuerdos de Puerto Rico, viles, tendencias a correr por parte del pueblo, socarrar goma, vender colección de gomitas, tortería de 5 pesos por 15 millones, limón de 50 y que te paguen con TDT, trucar TDT por TDT por TDT, vender servicios de limpiar patios de TDT, subcontratarse a limpiar las calles de vendedores sin licencias de vendidos, juzgar desde el arrebato porque no hay armonía, porque quedamos vivos. El hibisco manso dura más allá del próximo pago. Scene 8. Senex injects themselves with hibiscus. They only want to mix rum and milk. Inject themselves with as much flowering as they can find between crag and flower pot. Sell fruit at the stand, close the stand due to the rotten fruit law, inject themselves with metal intent, freeze the water, be an ice seller, sell cement balls to the government, sell pinchos or chata mavi, sell souvenirs of Puerto Rico, bills, tendencies to run on behalf of the people, char tires, sell collections of rubber bands, lottery of $5 for 15 million, lemon for 50 and they pay you with IOU, trade IOU for IOU for IOU, sell services for cleaning yards of IOUs, subcontracting oneself to clean the streets of cellars without sellout licenses, judging while high because there is no harmony, because we are still alive, and the tame hibiscus lasts beyond the next payment. Escenario 11. Senex interrumpe la misa. Atracón de hostias, envenenamiento de sangre de Dios. Senex interrumpe su ascensión para preconcebir un mundo sin deuda. Le contaron los sistemas reproductivos como tantos vagones en desuso, diciendo no cualificas como mujer, hasta que pases las 3 pruebas del Conservatorio Nacional. Prefiere succionar todo diálogo de sus entrañas, cortarse los eufemismos como órganos adicionales, mosaiquear la cara de Dios con pinceles baratos, erosionar, 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 interrumpir la misa con desglose etimológico, leer los nombres de las hermanas asesinadas, pontificar sobre la industria pecuaria, defenderse del tedio punzante de la colonización. Scene 11. Senex interrupts Mass, binges on wafers, is poisoned by the blood of God. Senex interrupts their ascension to preconceive a world without debt. They cut the reproductive organs like so many unused railroad cars, saying, "You don't qualify as a woman until you've passed the 3 tests of the National Conservatory." They prefer to suction all dialogue from their bowels, cut off the euphemisms like additional organs, mosaic the face of God with cheap paintbrushes, erode, erode, erode. Interrupt Mass with an etymological breakdown. Read the names of the murdered sisters, pontificate about the meat industry, defend themselves against the piercing tedium of colonization. Escenario 12. Puerto Rico prende sus luciérnagas para aparecer, luz ansiosa en el mapa mundi. Scene 12. Puerto Rico turns on its fireflies in order to appear, an anxious light on the world map. Escenario 13. Senex verifica que has muerto. Tu jugo de arándano en zaguanes en unalinduras, recolector de colibríes muertos, harás alfombras boreales de plumillas, pilas de periódicos en tu apartamento 3A. Si cortas la grama, saldrán hormigas de la fisura. Si abres las cortinas, habrán expertos disecando, cual domesticadores del caos. Mándalos pa'l carajo y date un trago conmigo. Yo invito. Scene 13. Senex verifies that y'all have died. Your blueberry juice in the hallways that drown pretties. Gatherer of dead hummingbirds, you'll make blanket borealis of nibs, piles of newspapers in your apartment 3A. If you cut the grass, the ants will come out of the fissure. If you open the curtains, there will be experts dissecting like domesticators of chaos. Tell them to fuck off, and let's get a drink. It's on me. Escenario 14. Senex procrea con su fantasma, quien le dice, puedes llorar, aquí todos lloramos, nadie te juzga. Si sientes que pierdes tu isla, si te vas, si te quedas, puedes llorar. Tienes derecho a odiar a tus opresores, derecho a quitarte las medias sin quitarte la correa, a colapsar como un edificio de contrato en una ruta corta, a disolver las palabras. Scene 14. Senex procreates with their ghost who says, you can cry, here we all cry, no one will judge you. If you feel you're losing your island, if you leave, if you stay, you can cry. You have a right to hate your oppressors, a right to take off your socks, but not your belt, to collapse like an edifice of contract on the short route, to dissolve words. Escenario final. Mi madre dice que está muy desmoralizada para escribir poemas sobre la deuda. Su mano aprieta mi corazón dislocado. Me pregunta si leí los poemas que me envió, si me gustaron. Son cortos. Me gustan, le digo, sus poemas sobre la deuda son largos, como los míos. Igualitos, me dice, y nos lloramos por no matarnos. Igualito. Mi madre nunca dice esto, aunque sí me dice que no puede escribir poemas sobre la deuda, pero no explica, aunque sí llora y me aprieta el corazón, aunque sí escribe poemas que son como los míos sobre la deuda, aunque no lo dicen los poemas, de la deuda se tratan todos, aunque no se lo diga nunca. Final scene. My mother says she's too demoralized to write poems about the debt. Her hand squeezes my dislocated heart. She asks me if I've read the poems she sent me, if I liked them. They're short. I like them, I say. Her poems about the debt are long, like mine. They're the same, she says, and we cry so as not to kill each other. Exactly the same. My mother never says this. Even when, yes, she says she can't write poems about the debt, but doesn't explain. Even when, yes, she cries and squeezes my heart. Even when, yes, she writes poems that are like mine about the debt. Even though she doesn't say it in the poems. They're all about the debt. Even if I never, ever say these words out loud. Even then. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Give it up for Raquel one more time, everyone. I wrote down, conceive a world without debt. So really nice transition to Janice's work. I think Janice will also be talking about her mother in her poetry. Janice is our next reader, who I'm proud to introduce. Her second book of poetry, Like a Solid to a Shadow, examines absence, grief, and language. The collection of documentary poetry centers around Janice's discovery of her deceased father's collection of cassettes containing love letters to her mother in their shared language of Ilocano. Kathy Lynn Shea writes, Janice Lobo Sapigao's Like a Solid to a Shadow is a collection about turning the traces of a story into the story itself. Here's a book that uncovers the dual nature of language. Even as it fails to bring the dead solidly back to life, every utterance resurrects that vitality. Janice is a daughter of Filipinx immigrants, and she co-founded an open mic in Los Angeles called The Sunday Jump. She's visiting us now from the Bay Area, and she's an English professor at San Jose City College. Give a warm welcome to Janice.
Hi, everyone. Oh, hello, microphone. Hi, I'm Janice. I'm hella excited to be in New York City, and I think you can see it in my fashion choices. Before I read from Like a Solid to a Shadow, I wanted to read from my first book. It's called Microchips for Millions, and it's about immigrant women in the Silicon Valley who make microchips, women like my mom. So my mom is on the cover too, so she's here too, I guess. And I'm like, I'm just gonna start. I'm just gonna do it. We're just gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Microchips for Millions. Any history of the present-day Silicon Valley region of California must begin with the consideration of First Nations. Long before the Spanish conquest, beginning at least as early as 500 CE, the San Francisco Bay was inhabited by an estimated 50 independent nations of the Ohlone and Costanoan people. Let the poetry of this space serve as a moment of recognition for the native peoples of the SF Bay Area, the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, whose lands we inhabit, and even here in New York City for the Lenape of Manhattan, which is the land of New York before it was called Manhattan. Let these pages allow empathy for immigrant women whose livelihoods are always, always at stake. The assembly line. My mother is a fab operator. 4 days a week, Ma gets up at 4 a.m., boils hot water in a kettle, and showers before it screams, ready for coffee. She watches the news as she pulls on her clothes, jeans and a simple tee, enough to soak up the 12-hour sweat resting in orthopedic shoes that amplifies the need for health benefits and overtime. Ma is always on the front line of the Silicon Valley shadow, one of thousands of women whose nimble fingers and silence grumbling spin microchips for millions, powering laptops and cell phones that she herself does not find intuitive enough to use. At the end of every day, she watches the Filipino channel, her swollen feet elevated on the living room couch, a luxury she buys herself and her family. By the early 1980s, Filipinos were one of the largest ethnic groups among Asian workers at National Semiconductor Corporation in San Jose, California. My mom says she's a fabrications operator. This mostly female labor force was appealing to management for a number of reasons. 1, many were fluent in English. 2, they had experience working in Philippine electronics plants. 3, they had a reputation for hard work. And 4, Filipino women were considered obedient to authority. I know my mom is an assembly line worker. Because if it is the small that runs the company, if it is the writing that dictates the action, if microchips are the heart of the revolution, if women's hands are the movement, if the Silicon Valley is the fold of my mother's palms, if the codes make us complicit, if technology reflects the speed of human connection, the union. My mother's boss was fired today after 19 years with the company. They cited failure to meet deadlines, to meet production goals, and Ma doesn't know what they're talking about because they've worked overtime and they've scheduled less workers. And Ma asks me, if I were her, would I fight? And Ma always fights. Her boss told them not to, that speaking out was risking their jobs, that human resources doesn't like when you ask questions. The Silicon Valley is largely anti-union. The long hours, the rule breaking, the hiring practices, the runaway jobs would be unjust under current labor laws. My mother sees patterns. She says the new CEO is from Intel and that he hires anybody who's worked there. And Ma jokes that even her workplace has Intel inside. Ma and her coworkers, they come together and they raise funds, print flyers, meet secretly to throw their former boss a pizza party. And I'm gonna read one last poem. And this is from this book called The Person. Ma's favorite colors are yellow and blue, like the Warriors. And for as long as I've known her, these haven't changed. I call her Ma, but her real name is Felicitation, and it means congratulations in French and Spanish. My mom says my grandpa Cashano and my grandma Lourdes named her Felicitation because she was born on New Year's Day. She likes shopping in the clearance sections of Ross and Marshall stores. She likes Filipino game shows, and she crushes on former Bay Area weatherman John Farley. Her favorite book is, I don't know, Balasang, comics. She was born in 1952 in Aloo, Omingan, Pangasinan, Philippines. And when I asked her, what schools did you attend? She said, are you interviewing me again? I can't catch her, but I always have her. She has 2 sisters and 2 brothers in the Bay Area, and 2 sisters who passed away during World War II. And when people die, my mom always says they forgot to breathe. She came to the US in 1978 with her sister, and they stayed with her parents and my uncle in a small house in San Francisco, California. Her first job was for Twin Industries, which is an electronics manufacturer, and her first car was a Ford Mustang, a car and a time she misses, especially when she shows me pictures. Microchips for millions. Thank you. All right. I write a lot about my family and my parents specifically. My dad passed away when I was 6 years old. He passed away from a heart attack. And that's what my second book is about. So for me, in literature, it is definitely a romantic endeavor to have my parents like live together on a shelf. Because in my lifetime, they didn't, you know? And so for me, like, knowing that my dad passed away when I was so young, to me felt like an injustice, you know, and it's like, who do you get mad at? Who do you fight back against, you know? There's like no one really to blame, just this sort of like unjust, empty, but I also feel like my relationship with my father still exists. We still have a relationship, even though he's not, even though he's like physically absent. And so this book is about who he is and like what did I learn about him. I was trying to learn Ilocano, which is my mom's and parents' language, and like they hella laugh at me when I would try to speak with them. They would like pet me. They would think like that's cute, you know. And it was really cute, and I get it. Yeah. So I also want to show you all something really quick. Oh, okay. Fuck it. One poem. When I was younger, I used to pinch myself. Not to wake up into reality or to counter disbelief, but to stop myself from feeling any form of intensity, targeting flesh in a fold between two fingers. This is where redirected pain went. And I didn't want to cry again in classrooms or succumb to strangers' stares or to make matters worse, make mama worry. I wanted to fade into backgrounds, disappear with ease, escape everyone's memories. You see, my heart has always gotten me into trouble because I was trained to believe that emotion was the antithesis to reason. I couldn't explain what I felt. It wasn't allowed and it wasn't accepted, much less understood. I couldn't explain myself in Ilocano or Tagalog. I'm just gonna end that there. Sorry, forgot the rest. Okay. Okay, we're gonna play a video now. We ready, Rob? This is the background for this book.
I'll be the boyfriend in your wet dreams tonight. Noses on a rail, little virgin wears the white. You cut your hair, but you used to live a blinded life. Wish I was there, wish we'd grown up on the same advice, and our time was right.
Keep a place for me, for me. I'll sleep between y'all. It's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. Keep a place for me.
Now and then you miss it, sounds make you cry. Some nights you dance with tears in your eyes. I came to visit you, 'cause you see me like a UFO. That's like never. 'Cause I made you use your self-control, and you made me lose my self-control, my self-control. Keep a place for me. I'll sleep between y'all, it's nothing. Keep a place for me. It's nothing, it's nothing. It's nothing, it's nothing.
There exist in the world pictures of my father as a worker in Saudi Arabia. I think he was in the US military, and I think he was an engineer. I think I remember this photo, and I think he was holding a gun. I think he was topless, showing off numbered tattoos. I think he was sitting in a bunk with the yellow-orange blanket. I think he was smoking. I think he was with my mother at the time. I think the man in the photo was my father. I think he is in the picture. He is, and I remember it. Who will fill me in, and who will tell me what happened to my father? And what if there are no records? Do records make someone exist? I was 23 years old when my mom told me that my dad used to send her these spoken love letter cassette tapes. He would speak his letters into a microphone, which then recorded onto a cassette tape. She said she only listened to them once, and then she put them away. I told my mom that I needed the tapes for an art project for a class I was taking, which is not true. I decided that I would attempt to transcribe and translate the tapes with what large and little I knew about Ilocano. I can fluently understand and directly translate words spoken in Ilocano. However, I cannot read or write in the language. And when I first heard his voice on a tape, I played his voice over and over. When I heard him laugh, and then I realized that I had never heard him laugh before, I pressed rewind and then play. I pressed rewind and then play. I pressed rewind and then play. I pressed rewind and then press play.
The continuation of my tapings from side E to side B. In the first place, I would like to elaborate to you or inform you that on the second to the last paragraph of my tapings, there was a wordings there which I stated March 22, requesting an amendment. Instead of July 22, I stated there March 22. So to correct, despite the mistakes, please understand na lang dahil maybe I was so excited on my tapings. So
In that clip,
thereafter,
my dad is just saying that he accidentally said July 22nd, but he really meant March 22nd. And I think he was like really nervous when he was recording that because he knew he only had one shot to do it. My name is Janice Lobo Sapigao, and I'm from San Jose, California, the Bay Area, not quite San Francisco, not at all Oakland. I'm from this in-between. I'm from a pause, a needed moment of clarity. I'm from the face people make when I don't answer with the birthplace of an Asian country. I am from the way I have to justify myself when I say I was born here. I am from my parents. My mother says my father named me. My mother told me that my father, whose name might be John in English, named me. His name might be Juan or June, and the J in Janice sounds like a joke. Like, do you get it? Like the unfunny punchline, like you're about to squeeze, but you decide not to after all. Like your fingers are clamping down on your nose, and the nis in Janice pretends to hide behind itself. Like you can see its shadow, like you have to pretend that it's not there. Janice is a form of Jane, which is a female form of John. Janice means Jane, means John, means I come from my father, whose name is not his own. My family says my name like this: Janice, Janice. And the ja, it means yeah, sure, it means yeah, whatever. And the nis sounds like, look here, I found you in that spot called ni. I see you there. Your shadow tells me, ni es, niece, my daughter, my girl, relative, my niece, you are not hiding. For why are you hiding? Come out. And I am Ilocana. My mother is from Aluo, Umingan, Pangasinan, Philippines. My father is from Asingan, Pangasinan, Philippines. My stepfather is from Cabugao, Ilocos Sur, Philippines. And when translated into English, it means very far. It means hella far. It means your tongue and your stomach must get used to being off the grid, to bumpy roads and potholes made bigger by monsoons and tsunamis, to far monsoons and to far tsunamis that are caused by a drought called homesickness, to homesickness as flight, to homesickness as poetic curse, to homesickness as the route on the map, to the end of far as the end of homesickness. My name Janice does not exist in Filipino. Janice is Janice is non-existent in the Filipino alphabet called Babayin. There is no J in Babayin. And the J, the just sound, and the rule I before E except after C, the rule that I think my name exemplifies sometimes. Sometimes C and S are pronounced S, but sometimes C is K, but S cannot be K. It just further complicates the location of my name. By the way, there's no C in Baybayin either. My name, therefore, is very much American, very much English. My American name overshadows where I am from. My middle name, Lobo, means wolf in Spanish, means balloon in Filipino, means embarrassing in middle school when your friends find out. Lobo, depending on how you pronounce it, can also be read as Lubo or Lubong, which is mud or earth or the globe. My middle name is a place, and I return to it. It is an in-between. Lobo to me sounds like no, no, don't go there. This is rock bottom. This is the end, but this won't end because this is a poem. My last name, Sapigao, means wait until you're 24 to do enough research and find out that it only means nuts. It means nuts of the bird. Sapigao means pretend it means seeds, seeds of a bird, and then poeticize the bird and let it fly. Then poeticize the seeds. I am the seed of a bird that flies. My dad flies. My dad is the bird, and I carry his name far. I fly. Thank you.
Give it up for Janice one more time. Our next reader is Adeeba Talukder, a Pakistani-American poet and translator, who I'm honored to have reading at the workshop for the first time, although this is not her first time here. She translates Urdu and Persian poetry and cannot help but bring those elements into her own work in English. Her chapbook, What Is Not Beautiful, is forthcoming from Glass Poetry Press in June. And she has a book, Share on The City of the Beloved, coming out next year from Tupelo Press. And that was the winner of the Kundiman Prize. Yeah. So we're super excited to have Adeeba with us tonight. Give her a round of applause.
Trying to make sure placement is good because can't really switch it. How to do this? Could you just make it a bit higher? I thought I could do it. Yeah, this is good. Thank you. I don't know how to do this. Everybody hear me? I'm so happy to be here and to be amongst such wonderful and beautiful company. So thank you to all my fellow readers. So my first poem is an ekphrastic poem based on the artist Zarina Hashmi's work. And she basically deals, or some of the stuff she deals with is migration, and in particular forced migration. And so anything from the 1947 partition of India and Pakistan to the present day Rohingya crisis and the Syrian refugee crisis. So this poem is titled Dividing Line. Dividing line. You tore into our land a crooked line. That morning we learned the dawn had been bitten by moths, flying in droves in madness towards light. Unsure of the nature of light, they had consumed everything. From above we saw only a silver abyss, 1 mile long, either side plunged in darkness. The darkness of night, the darkness of ash. We searched, sifting the soil, but found nothing. We left, trying to preserve at least memory. Our language, like us, had no land. I say to a small boat in black waters, alone in infinity, whose pulse do you hold, and what quivering waters hold you? Which direction have you found forward? What has lived in your past? The wood darkens with the night until all that is left is its silhouette. There are no answers. The air is empty with nothing to grasp. In the distance, the horizon trembles like a heartbeat. Tell them, I have seen skin crushed to a pulp, dead, transparent as paper. I have seen whole minds turn to ash. I have seen more water than I understand, seen humans claim all light. And some nights I swear it is so dark even God cannot see us. The next poem is titled, it's from my forthcoming manuscript, Shahrijana, the City of the Beloved, and it's titled, When in the Dark My Mind Brightened. And a lot of that manuscript has to do with my bipolar disorder and just what it feels like and coming to terms with what I've done during it or during some of the episodes. So, when in the dark my mind brightened. When in the dark my mind brightened, I realized I could no longer wait to be beautiful. Thus I pushed bangles upon bangles onto my wrist, rubbing my hands raw with metal and glass. Each time a bangle broke, I watched the blood collecting at my veins with a grim face, feeling more like a woman. No symmetry or sequence. All colors clanged upon my arms, bright, jeweled, and dissonant. That night, the window air was open, the full moon luminous. I waited for my mother to turn to see me as a bride. I wanted to tell her, the world is adorning itself for my wedding. That night, my mother looked into my eyes with terror. That night, she wouldn't let me leave. The next poem actually comes right after this poem in my manuscript. It's the title poem of the book, and it's titled Shahrijana, the City of the Beloved. Just to preface it a bit, this is a very difficult poem for me to read, but I think that's all the more reason for me to read it. Okay. It's a bit of a journey each time. Shahrijana, the City of the Beloved. At December's end, Benazir died in a suicide attack. Men burned, tires, cars, banks, petrol pumps, and factories, perhaps in grief. The nights in New York were clear, cold, and I read Fez in a way I never would again. In Washington Square, the benches were empty, the trees without leaves, their branches thick enough to hang something. That winter I found myself in his apartment, wearing so many bangles they couldn't move or make a sound. He gave me a glass of water, walked me to his bedroom. I said, "Marry me first." We spoke our vows. He couldn't pronounce the Urdu. An hour later, he told me he didn't love me, said not to take it personally, said these things take time. I ran from his apartment, tearing through the lobby, gulping cold air, screaming at God until I could only whisper, "I will wait." His breath from all the air vents, his voice in the sky and water. I rested by the rocks. Shahid witnessed me sitting alone there in barely a shawl. He measured the soil, then spoke. You are the beloved, you revolution. Silver-palmed goddess, hair falling in torrents, roses of lips. When you climb the scaffold's branch, all the bewildered lovers will wake. Search, search the half-lit lanes. Faiz writes, ना रसाई अगर अपनी तकदीर थी, तेरी उल्फत तो अपनी ही तदबीर थी. किसको शिकवा है गर शौक़ के सिलसिले, हिजर की क़त्लगाहों से सब जा मिले. If not to reach you was fate, loving you was in my own hands. Why complain then if my path went to meet the scaffold? I smeared lipstick on without a mirror, spread my scarves across the dirtied carpet, lay out my journals like sacred texts, scissored my hair so it fell like rain, smothered my palms with lotion and talc until they silvered at last. They told me to stop. They told me I was no prophetess, but I was, for I was wrathful. My aunt pulled Munu into the kitchen, said, "Now listen closely and promise me you'll be strong. Your sister has gone mad." In the ward I tore newspapers, shredded rose petals. Again and again I pulled the white sheets over my head and waited for him. I sang for 3 hours love songs, Faiz and Ghalib. मुझे क्या बुरा था मरना अगर एक बार होता. Dying wouldn't be so bad if I only had to do it once. I held out my wrist to the security guard, begged him to arrest me. The next morning I took attendance, read the headlines out to the other patients, collected their water cups. My aunt came to visit. She held my hand, said she hoped it was comforting. I said, maybe a little, but I'd rather hold his. Ghalib writes, तेरे वादे पर जिए हम, तो ये जान छूट जाना, कि खुशी से मर न जाते अगर एतबार होता. Though I lived on your promise, I didn't think it was real. Or else wouldn't I have died of happiness? A new patient. The others formed a circle around her. She spoke as if in a trance. I am the American dream. I am the American dream. An old lady who always asked everyone for quarters giggled. A phone call, my father's voice. My daughter, you have buried our heads in the dust. Ghalib writes, होता है निहाँ गर्द में सहरा मेरे होते, खिसता है जबीं खाक पे दरिया मेरे आगे. The desert hides itself in dust. The river bows to pray before me. After bringing me breakfast, my uncle told my mother I had been erratic with my eyeliner. She came to fix it. I knew then I had fallen. She showed me his email. It really isn't my fault, you see, if your daughter insisted on coming to my apartment on the 4th date. As I stared and sipped tea, the mirror told me, you are without beauty. When the mind rings and you are in the bathroom watching your face swell, some realities of marriage, of love, of the intellectual revolution, of God, thaw like soiled snow. There are new ones now. There's a gray that tinges the cold. The moon is of paper. In the water, too many fish. Your uncle is trying to get you married in Pakistan to someone, anyone. David is across the piano, singing. 10 minutes ago, I saw you to another girl. Thank you very much.